My brother invited us to stay at his place and said we wouldn't have to pay rent or bills. I work with money and my husband Charlie fixes cars. We live in the house where I grew up. But it's not just any house. It's been in my family for a long time and used to be where my dad ran his business. My brother was supposed to take over the business, so he studied economics in college. He even went to Oxford University to learn more about running a business. After that, he came back to the US and worked with our dad for a while. When our parents retired and moved away, they gave the business to my brother and the house to me, so my husband and I decided to live there. The house is in a great spot, close to public transportation and other important places like shops, hospitals, and schools. It's perfect for us now, and even when our kids grow up and move out, we'll still be comfortable here. I'm really thankful my parents gave me this house. We were excited about our future here, but things took a bad turn unexpectedly. My mother-in-law started visiting a lot after we moved in. She kept asking about my parents' money because they used to run a business. She'd say things like, "Hey Maya, how much money do your parents have? What will you get when they pass away?" It made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to be rude, so I just said, "I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it much. They gave us this house, so maybe there won't be much money left." I tried to brush it off, but she kept pushing, saying, "That can't be true. They're getting old. They must have talked to you about their money." It seemed like she was really interested in their wealth, like she was expecting to get something. I already knew what I would inherit, but I decided not to tell her or my husband, who's close to her, to avoid any more trouble. Something really unexpected happened next. Out of nowhere, my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family moved into our house. It was a holiday morning around 8:00 a.m. when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find movers standing there. I was shocked and confused. Then my mother-in-law and brother-in-law's family showed up and said, "We're moving in here today, so take care of us." When I saw their smirking faces, I felt a shiver down my spine. My husband woke up, and when I asked him what was going on, he seemed unfazed and said, "What's the problem? There's plenty of space in this house for all of us." He acted like it was totally normal for them to move in. As if that wasn't surprising enough, my sister-in-law said something even more unbelievable. She said, "We were invited by your brother, Maya. He said we don't have to pay rent or bills, so we're counting on you." Then my brother-in-law started barging into rooms without asking and said, "This room gets good sunlight, so we'll take it, Charlie. Move all the stuff out into the hallway." I felt really dizzy after all this happened. This is my house, but they're acting like they own it, opening doors and claiming rooms. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family have been pretty rude for a while, especially my sister-in-law, who even went through my bag without asking. If they keep this up, they'll start taking over my space. I've had enough. This is my house, so why are you acting like you own it? I've had it. I want everyone to leave. I usually keep my cool and don't raise my voice, but seeing these people move into the house my parents gave me without asking and acting like it's theirs pushed me over the edge. That's why I lost control and yelled at all three of them. But then something unexpected happened. "How dare you talk to us like that? You're the one who should leave." The moment those words were said, I felt a sharp pain on my cheek. Did I just get slapped? It took me a few seconds to realize what had happened. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it, and all I could feel was the throbbing pain on my cheek. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I can't live with people who would do something like that, but this house belongs to me. I don't want them living here like parasites, so I decided to pack my things and leave, planning to tell my family about what happened. I needed to find a place far away from here, so I rented a monthly apartment for now. I'll have to commute to work from there. As soon as I told my parents about what happened over the phone, I could sense their anger, even from a distance, especially from my dad. He's always been very caring and has adored me and my brother. As a CEO, he was strict, but as a father, he was always kind and ready to help us out of any trouble. I didn't want to drag my parents, who were just about to retire, into this mess, but I had no choice because my rightful home was being taken away from me. While I stayed in the monthly apartment, I was sure that my husband and his family were making themselves comfortable in my house. So I decided to take action based on suggestions from my brother and father. A few days later, during my break, I checked my phone and saw dozens of missed calls and messages from my husband. I knew exactly why he was trying to reach me. I took action and called the water and electric companies to shut off the utilities. Our house relies completely on electricity, and without it, nothing works. We haven't set up solar panels yet, so there's no other way to get power. Since it's really hot right now, living without electricity and water must be tough. My husband's calls were probably about dealing with this situation. Just as I was about to ignore his call, my husband rang again, perfectly timed with my break. "Hey, what's going on?" "There's no power, and the water isn't running." "Did you cut off the electricity and water?" I could tell from his voice that he was in a panic. The house belongs to me, so now that I'm not living there, it wouldn't make sense to keep the electricity and water running, right? That's why I had them shut off. If I kept the utilities on, I have to pay the bills even though I'm not living there. I can't agree to that, so I naturally had them turned off. When I explained this to my husband, he got really angry and insisted that I turn the services back on right away. But just because he wants me to doesn't mean I'm going to agree. I get it. If they want to renew the services, they should pay for it themselves. But whenever this comes up, they always say things like, "It's your house, so you should foot the bill." Their words and actions don't match. Anyway, I have no plans to renew the contract or tell them to leave the house immediately. I simply hung up the phone after saying that as my break was ending. Later on, my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law all called me saying the same thing. They wanted me to reconnect the electricity and water because their room was too hot and uncomfortable, and it was inconvenient without water. But these were their problems, not mine. After listening to their complaints, I told them to deal with it themselves and hung up. I thought they were just being greedy and hoped they'd give up and leave soon. Even after a week went by, there was no sign of them leaving. So I decided to take stronger action. I talked to a lawyer from my father's company about the situation and asked him to send a notice to my husband. The notice was about trespassing. They had entered my house without permission, forced me out, and were using it as if it were their own. I warned them that I was considering taking legal action against them for this. Why did I receive this document from a lawyer? Did things really have to escalate this far? My husband, who seemed surprised and panicked by my actions, came to me seeking a resolution. Knowing how much they care about their reputation, the thought of being sued would be really stressful for them. They definitely don't want to deal with a lawyer, but they also don't want to give up their current lifestyle. So they're likely trying to find a way to convince me to let them stay. I can see through my husband's intentions very clearly, but I couldn't bring myself to listen to their pleas, so I didn't give in to my husband's requests. My husband finally exploded in anger, forgetting he was at work, and yelled at me, "Stop it. Just because we're being a bit sneaky doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Go back to how things were and drop the lawyer." Despite his loud outburst, I remained unaffected. Instead, I felt annoyed by his call, thinking, who does he think he is, taking over someone else's house? No matter how much he shouts, my stance won't change. If they continue squatting there, I'll take legal action. They better think twice before acting. Even as my husband continued yelling over the phone, I ignored him and hung up. It felt like a waste of time. I had already discussed divorce with my lawyer. When I got home, I saw missed calls from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but I knew they'd only try to settle things. I didn't want to waste any more time, so I blocked their numbers to avoid further calls. After the threat of legal action, my husband's prideful family couldn't bear the thought of being sued. They packed their bags and left the house. With the lawyer's help, the divorce negotiations went smoothly. I arranged for a cleaning service to come in, and finally, I returned to my sparkling clean house. While living separately from my husband's family and then in a monthly rental was comfortable, nothing beats being back in my own home. However, I noticed that the house needed some renovations in certain areas. I discussed this with my father, who introduced me to a reliable contractor. I began planning the renovations with their help. Living alone is really comfortable. I enjoy the freedom of not being tied down by anyone else. I found myself enjoying the freedom of my current life. I could lounge on the sofa without anyone scolding me, eat whatever I wanted without judgment. But then, I received a call from an unknown number after 3 months of silence. Initially, I ignored it, thinking it might be a contractor. However, when the calls persisted, I reluctantly answered, only to find it was from my ex-husband, from whom I had recently divorced with the help of a lawyer. We had made a pact to never contact each other again. So why was he calling now, especially after changing his number? We had agreed through our lawyers to stay apart for good. There was nothing left to discuss, so I asked him not to contact me again. Just as I was about to hang up, he pleaded, "Please just listen to me for a moment. I'm begging you." Despite my reluctance, he began speaking without my consent. It turned out his company was facing a severe financial crisis and they had decided to reduce his salary. Moreover, my mother-in-law's health was failing, rendering her unable to work. My sister-in-law and her husband couldn't contribute much to the household expenses due to his unstable job situation. Although my sister-in-law was working multiple part-time jobs, most of her earnings were going towards paying off her husband's debts. My ex-husband was struggling to make ends meet, and with his salary cut, things were only going to get tougher. After hearing all of that, all I could think was, okay, so what? They barged into my house without permission, did whatever they wanted, and even tried to kick me out. It's simply unbelievable. I feel nothing for people who would do such a thing, and I have no sympathy for them. Even if you tell me about their troubles, it doesn't change anything. They're your family, you should deal with it yourself. There's nothing I can do about it. My ex-husband started to panic even more at my words. Don't say that. We're in serious trouble. We won't even be able to pay the rent for our apartment and will struggle to buy food tomorrow. We used to be a family, right? Please help us, he pleaded, almost in tears. But I wasn't convinced. When I was in trouble, he did nothing to help, and he, along with my mother-in-law, looked down on me. Just like her, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law always belittled me. They insulted me for my appearance or my old-fashioned views. They didn't care how much it hurt me. My mother-in-law not only made things worse, but she also pressured me to have a baby as soon as possible. She forced strange herbal medicines on me, booked unnecessary doctor's appointments, and spread rumors to the neighbors that I was unable to conceive. Looking back, there wasn't a single positive aspect to my marriage. My ex-husband, who used to be kind before we got married, became a puppet under my mother-in-law's control after the wedding. On the first day my mother-in-law barged into our house, I was out for an appointment. She cried to my husband, saying she wanted to be friends with me, but the moment we met, she would badmouth me. She'd say things like, "My son seems to have lost weight. Is it because your cooking is so bad?" Whether we were at home or out, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law would join in, laughing at me. I can't deal with people who behave like this anymore. No matter what you say, my feelings won't change. I can't help you guys, so I'm going to hang up now. And please never contact me again. With that, I finally hung up the phone and blocked the new number. Knowing my ex-husband, he might change his number and try to contact me again. So I decided to change my phone number at the store over the weekend. But before that, those four broke the promise made through the lawyer and suddenly showed up at my house at 11:00 p.m. "Open up, let us in, and take care of us. We're family, you should help us." They were banging on the door, yelling loudly without considering the late hour. "What's going on at this time? Please go back home, you're disturbing the neighbors." When I went to open the door, they seemed ready to force their way in. So I tried talking to them through the intercom, but they didn't care. They continued banging on the door and causing a commotion. I couldn't believe I was dealing with people behaving so recklessly. I felt overwhelmed and considered calling the police when I heard sirens approaching from outside. It seemed a neighbor had taken the initiative as soon as they heard the police sirens. The group, startled, thought I had called the police and attempted to flee. However, with a crowd gathered, escape wasn't an option. Consequently, they were escorted to the police station by the responding officers. I was questioned about the incident and I explained everything that had transpired. News of my ex-husband and his companion's actions spread rapidly in the neighborhood. Among the crowd was a co-worker of my ex-husband's, and by the next day, the entire office was aware of the situation. Already struggling due to a salary reduction, getting the police involved sealed my ex-husband's fate with his employer. He was fired, unable to afford his apartment rent anymore. Financial strain created tension between him and his sister's family, leading to their shared living arrangement coming to an end. Now, Charlie resides in public housing with his mother, working multiple part-time jobs to get by. Even his mother has taken on part-time work, eager to contribute financially.